So, what's going on? My amp is acting a little funny. It is cutting in and out, and I did a little bit of research last night when I was laying in bed, and it turns out this is kind of a common problem with uh, not only this model, but kind of ampegs and in general, and amps that have an effects loop. And before I dive super deep into this amp, I figured I would take these guys' advice and check out and see if this is the problem first, because it's a really easy fix. Some people suggest just taking a little patch cable, something like this, right, and just sticking it into the input and the output, and that will fix it, right? And other people suggest actually taking some electrical cleaner, which I happen to have, and cleaning the jacks out, kind of like doing one of these numbers, right? Spraying it in there and then brushing it. Because what's happening is the contacts themselves have become corroded, and they're no longer making contact, and so the signal isn't passing through. And when you're working with really high powered amps, things vibrate a little bit, and the dust and whatever can get in between the contacts, and it will just periodically cut in and out. Right, right. Well, I've already got it over here. If I would have had it over on top of my amp, I could have just turned it on, plugged this in, and if it fixed the problem, I would immediately know, okay, this is the problem. Now I'll bring it over to the bench and clean it out, because that's the problem. But rather than plug those things in and then bring it over here and having to clean it anyways, I might as well just bring it over here and clean it, because I'm going to have to do it anyways, right? And I might even go as far as to removing the amp from its case, putting it upside down, and taking the bottom off to access the panel that those are connected to. I'd rather not. This one up here in the front, the preamp, that one's really easy to access. What's basically holding it is a few screws, and all these guys. Like you pull these guys off, and there's like a couple. Let me just show you. Little nuts, that are holding it onto this panel here. And each one of these guys has that behind it, and then the jack has them too, and blah blah blah. And this right here is on a separate floating panel inside. But like I said, I could pull this out, flip it over, and take the bottom off and access these guys. And I might end up doing that anyways, because I kind of want to clean every one of these jacks, or these pots, which is you know, it's simple enough. So somebody's messaging me. But wow, getting a lot of messages there. All good. I don't know if you can hear my phone vibrating or not, to be honest with you. But if you guys haven't seen yet, we rearranged the band room. I guess I could show that to you. The drum's no longer against that wall. You know, we'd be coming in here, right? Boing, boing, boing. You'd see the drums over here, and then the amps would be against that wall. But we cleaned up and then put the drums over there in front of the amps, and it's kind of more, I don't know, stage-like, I guess. So, you know, I'm going to be over here. Buck or Mike is going to be over here, and Buck or Mike is probably going to be somewhere in here. I'm going to get a few more of these guys, right, to fill in this little area here. And, you know, it's just going to be slaptastic. But, sure. Anyways. What's going on there? Hi. So, yeah. So we're going to flip this thing around. This amp is so heavy. Like, it's actually heavy. I hear people complain about, you know, moving their gear around, you know, and like I'll pick up their stuff and it's like, this is like 30, 40 pounds. I don't remember the exact specs on this, but it's I think it's close to 90 pounds. This is actually a heavy one. I think 89, 88, 89. It's close to 90 pounds, something like that. Don't quote me, because like I said, I don't remember. But this amp is a pig. Back here so we can actually access these. Wow. Cobwebs. Tell you what, if a spider gets in here, they are just going to get cooked. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're dirty. I mean, it's kind of dusty in here. So we're going to do a little clean in here. Bring in here a little bit here. Sure. This guy out of the way. sure. I might as well clean all the jacks, right? Change these comments. Somebody needs to like contact YouTube and be like, hey, set the default to all. We're getting sick of missing our messages here. It's dumb. You know, I might end up pulling it out and taking a look at the contacts anyways, because I'm not 100% if this will actually clean the type of jack that this is using. We're just gonna have to see. Come on. Sounds like it's hitting a contact in there though. But yeah, what convinced me that this is the problem is they were saying that one of the things you can do to test if it's the problem is, you know, before you even do any of this, you know, put the patch line in here or clean them or anything, is when you get the cutout, is crank the volume up, you know, really high, and for whatever reason that will make it come back in periodically. And I did that, and what they were saying would happen happened, and that led me to believe that I had like a really dirty volume pot, you know. But apparently that's just not the case. If this is the problem. So, time will tell. Yeah, they these are nice tubes. I believe they're JJ tubes. Oh, no, they're electro-harmonics. Do I have a light in here? I've got a laser. I don't know if we're going to actually be able to see, you know, read what's going on here. No, not really. looks like they're made in Russia. Kind of hard to tell with that, you know. Yeah, this thing's got a lot of tubes in it. This is just the power section. It's got 6 of them, and I believe it's got 6 tubes in the preamp. It's this amp is totally a beast. Sure. Wow. Yeah, even these switches needed to be cleaned up. I could feel it. So I can feel stuff breaking up out of them. Yeah, simple enough, you know, little, you know. Let's give, I mean, there was nothing going on with these guys. I just cleaned them to clean them, but we're going to give these guys one more little rinse. And a brushing, just for good measure. Spray with this guy in there. Maybe try and hang on to some of the juice a bit. I thought that was a scratch. Yeah, fun times. I'm really hoping that this fixes the problem, because I don't work on amps, you know. I'll work on guitars. I'll work on solid state amps, you know, pretty carefree. But when it comes to tube amps, you know, there's components inside these things that hold charges for long periods of time. And I was playing this thing last night, which is when I discovered that this thing's behaving worse than I can deal with. And so it definitely hasn't been long enough for the components to have just discharged on their own. There's like these tools that you can make that will discharge them. I haven't made one, you know, but the point I'm making is the components that are in here that hold the charge, they, in high powered amps like this one, they hold enough charge that can literally just blast you right through a wall. They'll kill you instantly. And even if it's not plugged in, you know, just imagine this thing's full of, I don't know, 5, 10 little batteries in here that are, you know, probably about the size as one of these guys, right? But they hold so much electricity that, you know, if you touch them, you just die. That's just all there is to it. It'll just kill you. And I don't want to mess with that. So call me crazy. Simple maintenance and the amplifier will last another 50 years. Probably should have left it unplugged and discharged for a week. Well, you know, I've watched some videos, right? I used to really be I still am into it, but not as much as I used to be. But I used to really love watching guys build amps from scratch and work on amps and all kinds of stuff. I thought about getting into it, you know, just as a hobby. You know, I wasn't going to try and sell amps or anything like that, but these guys would be going and picking up amps from like the 60s and stuff. And they were even cautious. You know, saying things like, yeah, this amp might not have even ran for 30 years, you know, but these components, they hold a charge, you know, apparently indefinitely until they fail, you know. Like there's certain things in here that will just discharge on their own through leakage or whatever, but those components are made to hold a charge, you know. That's their job, and they will do that unless they're malfunctioning, you know. Now I'm sure that there's um, you know, that could just be something that they're taught, you know, and there actually is a threshold that you can, you know, cross over, and after that they actually are um, drained or whatever you want to call it, you know. But I don't know, and it's, you know, it's just good practice, you know, to treat everything like it's going to kill you inside a tube amp. But you know, I don't know. You know, because the moment you get complacent, you know, that's going to be the day that you get, you know, blasted through, you know, your shop into your kitchen or where, you know, whatever, depending on where you have your shop at. Yeah, I got this thing retubed a few years ago, and I still have the old tubes that I um, you know, that were taken out of this. When I first bought it, I took it to a place, and what's kind of crazy is this place didn't give me back my original tubes that were in this. Now, I don't know if they were original to the amp. I don't know what the deal was. You know what I'm saying? Somebody could have, that owned this previously, could have bought some super special tubes and put them in there. They could have been cheap, nothing tubes. But in this instance, which is generally a normal practice, they didn't give me my tubes. And I didn't ask him to switch my tubes out. I just asked him to do like a once over, because that's just what you do because I bought this used, um, because they don't make this amp anymore. I went into a shop and they had it, and I was like, holy cow, this is like the holy grail amp. I'm leaving with this today. So I bought it, and yeah, it worked at where I got it from, but I took it to a shop and just had them go over it. And then when I took it home, I noticed in the back that the tubes were different, and I was like, huh. And I never really paid that much attention to the tubes that were in it. I just noticed that they were different when I got them home. And I was like, huh, I wonder if the tubes that were in there were some special something and he tried to pull a quick one, or I don't know. I really don't know. But I do know that when a tech normally switches your tubes out, they give you your old tubes in boxes of the new tubes that they put in. Like if I'm going to put these tubes in, they come in boxes. And I'll take the tube out of the box, pull this guy out, put it into the box. But you get what I'm saying. And that didn't happen. Right? So, I don't know. The world keeps spinning. So, I think that's really all I can do back here. I'm going to flip it around and clean the switches that I can get to. I can't get to the pots, the volume and all that other stuff. I would have to pull this thing out that way and then flip it over and, do the whole deed. But, and I can't turn this on without a speaker plugged into it. That doing that is called running your amp without a load. And if you ever run a tube amp without a load, you fry them. So I need to, before I turn this thing on, get it over there next on top of my speakers and plug them in and then turn it on. But before I do that, I'm going to clean these switches in the front just for fecals and funnies. Oops, we've got a little loop going on there. I'm going to clean this guy right here. But I have cleaned these guys before. They were super scratchy. Kind of like when you have like an old car stereo or something, you turn up the volume, it's all, or you changing radio stations, they were acting like that. Pretty bad. But it's gotten to the point where it was really bugging me. So I cleaned them, and I didn't actually, well, I don't need to get into that. Let's just say I could have done a better job, but it was a vast improvement. I think there's still a little bit of scratchiness like over here, where you never turn it to, because everyone in the room dies. There's literally no reason for anybody to turn this amp up that loud. Yeah, tubes can be kind of touchy, you know. They can go microphonic and do all kinds of weird stuff. This looks like it's a different type of jack. Like these guys, like these ones and the ones in the back, they all look like surface mount jacks. If I had my little jar of parts, I could show you the difference. But this is the type of jack that would be more like in a guitar. These are the ones that would be like in a circuit board. Okay. I haven't had any indication that these switches are going out or even dirty, but I'm here. You know what I mean? I'm going to be very careful. There's no reason for me to be careful just yet, you know, except for maybe carrying this thing back over, you know, fall on the drum set or something like that. But once I get into this thing, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up doing, I will definitely be careful. Last time I had a problem with this thing cutting out, it was this switch right here. This one, it's the graphic EQ, right? And it says, you know, it has an indicator, you know, like with a button out and a button in, right? And it tells you that this one's out and this one's in. You know, I don't know who they think they're talking to, but graphic EQ. So when you push it in, this light turns on up here, and now you're using this thing. I never use it, so I got it at, you know, 0 all the way across. But here's the thing. Your signal comes in through here, goes through all this stuff, and then whether you're using the graphic EQ or not, it travels through this switch, right? So, and I learned that by looking at the schematic. Yeah, no, this is one of the holy grails. Now, the people get kind of weird about it. I think that a lot of people are, you know, well, I own this one, and I want to think this one's better. So when I go online and say which one's better, I'm going to say the one that I have is better, right? But if you listen to the techs, right, like the amp techs that don't own the amps, right? They don't work for Ampeg. They don't, you know, they have no skin in the game. You know, they don't care. they'll tell you that the original Ampeg, you know, if you want to get to the Ampeg sound, you got to use the original Ampeg design, right? And this is that. And the reason that it is because it doesn't have a master volume. This has just a volume knob, you know, and I kind of wish that it had a master volume, you know, which would separate the preamp from the power amp. And, you know, I could set the volume at whatever, and then I could set the master volume at, you know, whatever. Then at that point, this I could actually use at quiet volumes. You know, I could have the master volume set at 1, and I can crank this all the way up if I wanted to. But the idea is the more components that your signal gets sent through before it leaves the amp influences the sound, right? In some fashion, right? So the master volume knob, right, that is a variable resistor. So you're sending your signal through an additional resistor that isn't in the original schematic. That undoubtedly changes the sound. You know, you might not be able to hear it that well, but whether you can hear it or not, like, it does change the sound, and you can actually see the difference on like an oscilloscope, right? So you can see that it's happening. Now, I don't care, right? But that it's just true. And the point is if you want to get to the original Ampeg sound, you got to use an amp like this or earlier. Oh, I hit the vape. Who's leaving? Oh, we had one leave. That was a kid. Anything old school with tubes is the holy grail. Well, that's that's debatable. It depends on what you're going for. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of old amps with tubes, and each one of those has a particular sound. You know, you can get, you know, the early rock sound, right? And the rock sound can be early American. It can be early British. It can be, you know, whatever. And it really just depends on what you're going for. But I agree, you know, tubes is where it's at. I mean, that's where we need to agree on. But I will say that some solid state amps, some of them can have a good sound. You know, like guitar player for Pantera, you know, he used Randall heads for years, and at some point he switched over to solid state. He might have even used solid state Randall. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up, but I do know that he used solid state for at least a minute, you know. and solid state are they might not have the tone, but they're quicker. Like if you're playing like, you know, that type of stuff, they're more snappy. Okay, how to clean these batches. Oh yeah, and when I discovered that this was in the signal path, and it was possibly making it cut out the first time, when I went to clean this thing, the black stuff that started coming out of this switch was just crazy. I couldn't believe it. If it starts to happen on any of these switches, I'll show you, because it was burls. I was like, yeah, this has to be the problem. This is filthy. And it fixed it. It totally fixed it for years. And I'm having a similar problem this time with it cutting out, but it's not acting exactly the same. The way that it's acting is it's the effects loop. But I'm just cleaning this stuff just because I should, and I'm a good amp dad. So fun stuff. Solid State was a Canadian company through Radio Shack. Yeah, Radio Shack, dude, back in the day, actually had some really cool stuff. You know, there were some like audio geeks that like totally shopped at Radio Shack all the time. They'd buy all kinds of cool stuff. And some of those companies, like, actually went on to be like some serious brands. Like I'm sure I've told you, CJ, that when that guy, I forget his name, he was number 5 from the top of Microsoft. When we went into his storage unit, right, and had to clear out all the stuff, that guy had so much Radio Shack shit in there that it was crazy, and I grabbed a lot of it. A lot of the stuff I had no idea what it did. You know, like little laptops that were like this big. You know, you'd pull them up, and you know, had full keyboard and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I looked into some of the stuff later, and it was for like printing out like computer code. Well, I shouldn't really say printing out because that's the wrong term, but for lack of a better word, printing out code, computer code on cassette tapes. You know what I'm saying? Like audio cassette tapes. And then what you could do is you could take the thing that recorded it and plug that into a computer, put the cassette into it, right? And close it, press play, and then that audio would get played into the computer, and it was like a way of transferring files. on from computer to computer through cassette tapes. Really crazy. He had like 5 of them, probably more. I ended up with like 3 of them, just because I thought they were neat looking, but I had no idea what they were. Bring your batteries there. Like what kind of batteries? Like double A's or whatever, or your car battery. There used to be a Radio Shack in the mall, back when malls were a thing. I'm sure there's still a mall somewhere, but here, it was like all of a sudden, I remember, like going to the mall, and then like all of a sudden, the mall was like a ghost town. Mall used to be super super busy, and then I went there one day and like no one was there, and then I went there again, and half the shops were gone, and then I went there again. It was like only the food court and like I don't know, a couple stupid little things that like the kids went to, like Spencer's and Hot Topic. You know what I'm saying? And then it's like shut down now. I think it like the theater that was attached to the mall is still running, but I don't think there's anything else going on over there. But from what I've heard, that land in the building was bought by some very, not very, extremely wealthy foreign person. I don't even know if they live in the country. And he has plans to do something with it. I really am not sure what, but that's what I've heard. And I heard it from a reliable source. Like, this person is involved in real estate, and I think even knows the person. Because if I remember right, they even told me their name. I want to say they were from India. This one feels a little gritty, but this is one of the buttons that actually doesn't matter. It's only in the circuit when you push it. Like right now it's not doing anything. Now it's doing something. So unlike this one, right, it's doing something right now. It's still doing something right now. Right? These guys, they're only doing something when they're pushed in, which is why this one, it's a must that it must be cleaned, because it's engaged whether you've got it pressed or not. All right, so built my first transistor radio with Radio Shack components. Huh? Did you build it out on a breadboard, or was there like a kit? You know what I'm saying? Where like you with like a kit with like directions and you um you know paint by numbers type stuff. You know what I'm saying? You know, you buy your kit and you got your parts, and it's like, now take this piece and put it here, and take this piece and put it here, which is totally cool, right? It's still totally cool. But I think building on a breadboard, which I haven't done. I have breadboards, but I still haven't done anything with it. I brought so many different things home that day that I worked. Uh, emptied out that storage unit. I ended up with all kinds of crazy stuff. Um, a dirty switch. You're old. You remember Woolworths. Haven't heard of it. Okay. Well, let's give this a try. Real quick, like, and see if that did anything. Maybe. Maybe not. Well, we're just going to have to see. I mean, things started cutting out pretty quick. I mean, I played for a little bit, and then it just started to crap out. And I noticed that it crapped out when I turned the volume up pretty loud by hitting one of my effects units. I had the volume turned up way too high on it. So like when I hit the button, it was just all boom, got really, really loud, which might have vibrated some of the corrosion into a place that was not ideal. And after that, it just started to act funny. But I went through the process of elimination. I had my amp hooked up. It was going through my bass was going through my effects and then into my amp. And so I'm playing, it's acting weird. I'm like, is it my bass? So what I did is I unplugged my bass, plugged in that guitar. It was still doing it. So I was like, okay, it's not my guitar, right? I was like, is it my effects? So I plugged the guitar directly into the amp, eliminating the effects. It was still doing it, right? So I was like, okay, well, it's the amp, right? So now we're going to carry this beast back over here. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I remember you telling me about the Bakelite. Where you made the Bakelite with a mold, right? Is that the one? That's really kind of cool. Bakelite's a weird material. There's there used to be a lot of stuff made with that stuff back in the day, and it can kind of get a little crusty. It kind of gets like this weird disease, if you want to call it that, and it spreads and gets all flaky and funky. Okay, let's carry this pig. Ooh, my back. But, you know, good Bakelite, you know, it can last for a long time. Holy cows. That's heavy. Ow. Okay, so okay. Where are you? Okie dokie. So we got this. It's just kind of in the way. Finally able to use my cords. You know, I ran out and bought a bunch of cords. And Jason ended up using them for well, a long time. That's funny because he's got gear, you know. He's totally got gear. I mean, Jason probably has as much gear as I do. I think he's got more gear than I do. Original Bakelite is toxic. It will last forever. Yeah, that's kind of funny how the bad stuff sticks around, you know, like that. I'll be attentive to a berry color. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd like to see it. Okay, we're about to test her and see if it cuts out. Now, if it acts weird still, what I'm gonna do is take this guy right here and plug it into the in and the out of the effects loop, and I'll know that it is the effects loop. I just didn't get it clean enough, and at that point I'll bring it back over here and take the damn thing apart, which I'm probably going to end up doing anyways because I would like to clean the volume pots and stuff, which is going to drive me crazy. Huh, Rock Dog? Yeah. You're a crazy girl. Yeah, crazy puppy dog. You're just so crazy. Okay. New off. All right, let us pray. These are all out. Yeah, you hear that? Volume knob is a little, it's a little dirty. I will say that it already sounds a lot cleaner. Like the tone is a lot crisper. So I don't know if you guys can tell, but it sounds like I've got my treble rolled all the way forward. You know, which is typically the first things to go when things start to get dirty. You lose your highs. So the fact that it's sounding really like you can really hear the string noise. Let me check the EQ. Something might be moved around on that because that's really crisp. No, I mean, it's where I put stuff. And I also have it like way lower than I normally do, and it sounds loud. I would have to say I think it's fixed because even in that amount of time, yesterday, it was already tripping out, like bad. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to adjust my EQ. It's I mean, I like my notes to be able to be heard, you know, especially in a mix. I'm probably gonna have to jam with the guys and hear it in a mix, right? But to me, as it sounds, as standing alone, I think it's a little trebly. I think we cleared out a lot of crap that was getting in the way of some of those high frequencies, and now that they're gone, it's, you know, the bass is just sounding really bright, and which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but alone it sounds pretty pretty bright. So I might have to get into the EQ and tone down some of the highs, maybe a little bit of the mids. The bass is cranked on it, completely cranked. So I can't really go too much higher on that. But yeah, I think that did it. I'm stoked. I'm probably going to play on it a little bit more. But yeah, a rock dog. Well, that's what this live was about. I'm now going to go out into the garage and start working a little bit more on Rihanna's box. And before I do that, I'm going to see what Roxy needs. And probably 12 more snacks. Well, that instantly made you stop wagging your tail and tilt your head and start doing dog math. Snack. Oh. Snack. Oh. Can you calm down, little girl? Well, yeah, like I said, I'm gonna take care of all that, but I'll be going live again probably within 10 minutes. But I'll be out in the shop working on the box. So thanks for stopping by. I'll see you soon.